you very much, Lord Loomba. Thank you, Raj. Welcome to everyone present for this very special event. I'm Karan, Lord Villamoria, the founding chair of the Advisory Council of the Loomba Foundation, and very proud to have been involved almost from day one. And this is the 10th anniversary of the UN's International Widows' Day, always held on the 23rd of June. And this comes at this awful time in the world's history when COVID-19 is causing this enormous suffering around the world. Families have been hugely affected. The pandemic is indiscriminate in who it affects, but of course, it has created many widows. And this greatly exacerbates the desperate situation of the millions of dependents who find themselves, and of the widows and their families, and including, of course, all over the world, in India, in Africa. And we've seen in April and May the tragic COVID crisis in India, which was just so awful. And in my role as president of the CBI, I was privileged to be able to help, and British business really rose to the challenge and without blinking, helped in an enormous way, in a variety of ways. So this day, International Widows' Day, shines a light on the injustice, on the devastating impact of what widows suffer around the world. And on the 23rd of June, the Loomba Foundation, a British UN NGO, has now for 2 decades initiated International Widows' Day. This is a virtual conference on the 10th anniversary, and it goes back to 2005 when International Widows' Day was launched by the Loomba Foundation in the House of Lords. And that was after a 5-year campaign for recognition. Eventually, 65th General Assembly, the UN, December 2010, the first International Widows' Day then took place on the 23rd of June 2011. It was a conference held at the UN headquarters in New York and chaired by the Secretary General of the UN's wife at the time. So since then, this day brings to focus the plight of widows around the world every single year. And this conference will be hugely illuminating in every area of widows and how they suffer and the opportunities. And that's the other thing. Not only we're highlighting the plight, we're highlighting the opportunities. And there are huge opportunities to bring relief to widows. And the Secretary General of the United Nations has sent his message on International Widows' Day from New York today. And if you haven't read it, please read this message. It is so powerful. It is very short and so powerful. And he says, and I just pick out a few of the highlights. He said, human rights should not be contingent on marital status. Inheritance laws and social safety nets should ensure that widows are protected and secure. And then he says that the COVID-19 pandemic has both increased the number of widows globally and exacerbated many of the challenges they face. And governments must consider the world's 250 million widows. Even before the pandemic, the Secretary General says, nearly 1 in 10 widows lived in extreme poverty. Governments should make special efforts. And he urges every country to a call to action on human rights. And the persecution and disinheritance of widows by law and customs is one of the worst examples of gender discrimination. This is what the Secretary General says. Finally, he concludes saying that on International Widows' Day, to make a commitment making sure all widows occupy a respected place in our societies so that they can live their lives in peace and reach their full potential. And Raj Loomba has got a great idea, Lord Loomba, of setting up a support group to help COVID widows financially and provide them support to overcome the bereavement grief that they've been experiencing. And Raj, I do hope you will speak about this because I think it's an excellent idea that we should all support. The conference today, you've got superstars taking place. Our dear friend Cherie Blair, Raj himself, Shamin Lalji, great supporter from day one, Peter Raj Singh, Harjeet Singh, another great supporter, Margaret Owen, Lily Thapa, Rosaline Owa, Eleanor Nawandi Nobi, apologize any mispronunciation, Carolyn Moore, Charles Ochichi, Rose Sarwat, Shure Reddy, and Abhi Naha. What a lineup. And I'm sure it's going to be extremely productive, extremely constructive. And I conclude with this. I had the privilege last month of speaking at the Commonwealth Women's Entrepreneurship Summit. And in that summit, there were some key highlights that apply to today, what we're discussing. Women currently make up 50% of the UK's population, but only 17% of business owners. And one of the big barriers is low self-confidence. And if that is for women generally, just imagine for widows around the world, the low confidence that they experience because of what they are subjected to, which is completely unacceptable. And I gave the small example of my recent visit to Rwanda when I went to see the mountain gorillas and came across this charity, Ride for Women. And Ride for Women looks after women, but amongst the women, there are widows. And the founders say that these women, the widows, get the roughest patch of life in our community. In their culture, the man of the house, it's his decision. Women have 5 to 8 children. When their husbands pass away, they struggle so much with these children. It is awful. And I saw that with my own eyes. So we've got to do whatever we can. And I am continually in awe of Raj Loomba, of what he has done, he and his family, in founding the Loomba Foundation. I will never forget when he launched it with Tony and Cherie Blair on the stage at a major Asian event soon after Tony became Prime Minister in 1997. And I went up to him, and I'd never met him before, and I said, what you're doing is amazing. I've never come across anyone who wants to do something for widows. And it started with India, and now it is an international initiative. And thanks to you, Raj, thanks to you, we have International Widows Day today. So I wish the conference every success, and it's a privilege to be here with all of you. All the very best. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Lord Bilimoria. This is Obi Naha here from Cambridge Wireless. That was just a fantastic introduction. I think we're all touched and privileged to be here. I'm just going to take you through why we here at Cambridge Wireless are really honoured to be hosting and organising this really impactful conference here. Cambridge Wireless, or CW, we're a not-for-profit technology membership community. And really what we are aiming to do, and we've already started, is to empower widows and children of widows through technology. So for example, like mobile learning and mobile finance, and looking at how technology can really help for digital inclusion. And so that's where we're bringing the tech community together to really is to have a call to action to do something, because I'm sure we can. And we've already started an initiative in collaboration with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women in terms of having a mobile learning system to help women entrepreneurs around the world. So with that in mind, we're really honoured to be hosting and organising this. And it's my honour here to also to introduce you to Lord Loomba. And before I do that, I'm just going to read through a profile here of Lord Loomba. So Lord Raj Loomba, CBE, philanthropist, founder, and chairman of the Loomba Group of companies and member of the House of Lords, began his journey in a small Punjabi village in India. When his father passed away, leaving his mother a widow, life changed dramatically for Raj and his 6 siblings as they experienced firsthand the prejudice and suffering faced by his mother, ultimately providing the impetus for the Lord Loomba Foundation. Using her late husband's funds, Pushpa was able to educate all her children and sent Raj to America to study at the University of Iowa. He arrived in London in 1962 with nothing but a strong work ethic. Under the guidance of his uncle in Wigan, he started trading on a market stall in Widnes near Liverpool. In 1964, he married Veena, with whom he had 2 daughters, Rita and Roma, and 1 son, Rakesh. Over the next 25 years, Raj grew his business into a successful London-based clothing company supported by his wife. In 1997, Raj's journey took a new turn with the founding of the Loomba Foundation in his mother's memory. The foundation is dedicated to the cause of alleviating the suffering and discrimination of widows in the developing world. In 2008, in recognition of his contribution to society, Loomba was appointed Commander of the British Empire, CBE. In 2011, Loomba was elevated to the House of Lords as a life peer. Over the past 2 decades, Raj has devoted his life to advocate and improve the lives of widows and their children around the world. So now it's my really deep honor here to introduce you to Lord Loomba.
Thank you so very much, Abhi, for those kind words, and also hosting and managing together with Rachel Care this wonderful event today. Distinguished speakers, participants, and friends. Today is a big way for us at the Loomba Foundation, as it marks 10 years since the International Widows' Day conference that took place in New York on the first UN recognized International Widows' Day. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this conference from the bottom of my heart. I would especially like to thank Lord Karan Moria, who I know had to go to another meeting with the minister, and therefore he could not stay with us, but he spoke so well. And, and he has chaired the Loomba Foundation, as you heard, the advisory council, ever since we started in 1998. I would also like to welcome and thank our president, Mrs. Sherry Blair, CBE, who has been such a steadfast supporter of the Loomba Foundation for over 20 years. She is our pillar of strength, and we would not be where we are today. Thank you, Sherry. Welcome to our trustees, Harveer Singh, for moderating this conference, and trustees Shaman Lalji, who will be doing the vote of thanks, and my dear friend, Dr. Peter Raj Singh, who will be joining the panel for Q&A. A little word about Peter. In fact, on my very first visit to America, when I went there to launch the charity and also introduce the UN to International Widows' Day, it was Peter who actually saw me and gave me full support without anything in return. And ever since then, now it's 10 years gone, Peter has remained like Harjeev, a very good friend of mine and supporter of the Loomba Foundation. I also welcome our speakers today who have taken time out of their diaries to be with us. Rosalind, Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi from Nigeria. By the way, Rosalind is from Kenya. Caroline Moore from USA. Lily Thapa from Nepal. Rose Sarwat from Tanzania, but I don't see her yet. She'll probably be joining us a little later. Shori Reddy from India. Now, I remember Shori actually held International Widows' Day 2 years or 3 years ago, when he had a congregation of 10,000 people and took the message to the to the Prime Minister Modi to help widows in India. It was a great event, and one of my staff in India actually spoke at that gathering. Charles from Uganda, and last but not least, I would like to officially thank Abhinaha, the CEO of Cambridge Wireless, and Rachel Kerr, who are managing this event today. And without their help, I don't think we would be able to do what we have done so far. The conference takes me back to the time in 2005 when we launched International Widows Day and our global campaign to have the UN recognize it officially as an annual day of action to highlight the plight of widows worldwide. We discovered that there were 258 million widows around the world, and there was no organization at that time who was helping them or looking after them, not even the national governments or even the UN. The word widows did not feature in any of the department or area at the United Nations even. Since then, each year, the United Nations Secretary General has issued a special message to emphasize the importance of this issue. And today, Secretary General has done so again. This is his message for International Widows Day. I know Karan has already given you a glimpse of it, but I would like to read his whole message, which I have been requested by the United Nations to do so. In his message, and I quote, he says, "For many widows, losing their husbands also means losing identity, land, rights, property, income, and possibly their children. Their physical safety is at greater risk just when they may be suffering serious emotional trauma. Human rights, including the right to inherit and own property, should not be contingent on marital status. Inheritance laws and social safety nets should ensure that widows are protected and secure." He continues, "The COVID-19 pandemic has both increased the number of widows globally and exacerbated many of the challenges they face, including access to bank accounts and pensions. As governments provide economic and social support in response to the pandemic, they must consider the world's 250 plus million widows. Even before the pandemic hit, nearly 1 in 10 widows lived in extreme poverty. Social assistance, including cash transfers and pensions, can help support widows who are often left to take full responsibility for their families. Governments should make special efforts to ensure these measures reach women with low visibility, for example, those without identity cards or bank accounts. I urge every country, as a critical element of my call to action on human rights, to pass and implement legislation and policies that promote gender equality, and to repeal all discriminatory laws that perpetuate women's subjugation and exclusion. The persecution and disinheritance of widows by law and custom is one of the worst examples of gender discrimination. On International Widows Day, let's commit to making sure all widows occupy a respected place in our societies. with access to legal and social protection so they can live their lives in peace and reach their full potential. The UN Secretary General, as you have heard, has said it all, and there is not much for me to add. So when I look back on some of the work the foundation has done, I can't help but think that a lot of the gains that were made over the last decade have to do with the UN declaring June 23 as International Widows Day, as a day of action dedicated to highlighting and combating the discrimination and injustice faced by widows worldwide. International Widows Day has helped to expand efforts by concerned governments, organizations, and individuals to positively impact on lives of widows worldwide. What has added a new dimension to these challenges is the current reality of COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to the still rising number of infections worldwide is the less evident but equally prevalent psychological impact. Even as research evolves around how countries, organizations, and individuals can fight its spread and improve their ability to manage infections, what is becoming clear is that the pandemic is also having an effect on mental health. And among the most vulnerable groups affected by this are widows. Widows are one of the most overlooked and marginalized groups in the world. They are often left dealing with the prospect of handling finances, children's upbringing, and home management all on their own, which makes them especially vulnerable in times of crisis. At the Loomba Foundation, we understand that the negative impact the pandemic is having on the economy, healthcare, and social lives has only multiplied when it comes to the lives of widows. At the G7 summit 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Johnson expressed his determination that the UK should be a force for good, and his proposal to commit to sending 1 billion vaccine doses to poorer countries and getting 40 million more girls into education by 2026 was agreed by world leaders. No single group is more adversely affected by the pandemic than widows. We need similar enlightened leadership to help them. This is why today we call on the British government to establish a COVID-19 widows support group to look at the special circumstances of women who have lost their husbands to the pandemic and are left without adequate means to fend for their families, and to provide them with the financial support and practical help they need to overcome their bereavement grief. And we call on governments everywhere similarly who are deprived, neglected, and forgotten in their hour of need. I know our trustee, Mrs. Shaman Lalji, will be giving a vote of thanks. However, I would like to say my personal and sincere thanks to Shaman Lalji herself, who with her late husband Shiraz Lalji has done so much to help the Loomba Foundation ever since we started in 1999. That was our first fundraising event, and that's where I met Shaman and Shiraz. And since then, they have done so much, I just can't explain in this speech. I would like to thank my friend Lord Karan Billy Maria, the chairman of the Loomba Foundation Advisory Council for his wise counsel over the years, and of course, our President, Sherry Blair, whose tireless commitment to supporting the cause of disadvantaged widows has been such a major factor in our efforts to bring the important issue to the attention of the international community. At this point, I would like to mention that if it wasn't for Sherry Blair, we would not be celebrating International Widows' Day. She traveled to New York at least 10 times during those 5 years, or even more. She spoke to the Secretary General, she spoke to about 50 different representatives to the United Nations. She actually left no stone unturned, as she was as determined as myself to get this day recognized. And I give you congratulations, Shri, today for achieving it. I would also like to extend my personal thanks to some others who have so generously supported the work of the Loomba Foundation, both financially and otherwise. Susan and Graham Toba, Aruna and her late husband, Abhay Oswa, Brightson Travel, the Hinduja Foundation and his family, Sir Richard Branson, the Lions Club International Foundation, the Rotary Club International Foundation, Preeti Mandavia, Chris Parsons. Now, Chris Parsons has raised so much money for us by doing different events for us. He bicycled from London to Gibraltar. Then he walked from Mumbai to Bangalore, and only last year, just before the pandemic, he bicycled for 41 days and covered 4,100 kilometers from Kanyakumari, which is the south end of India, to Kashmir, which is the north end of India. And he has raised so much money by doing these 3 events, and I'm very grateful to him. Rishi Jan from Mumbai, who has helped us organize fundraising events and has also personally supported the charity. And of course, Raju Chadda from India, who has also supported financially the Loomba Foundation. In addition to that, I'm very grateful to all my trustees in America, in India, and in the USA, present, past, and current trustees. And finally, as we look ahead to the coming year, I hope all of you here on this distinguished panel will redouble your efforts and stay with us on our important mission to improve widows' lives and eradicate discrimination forever. I will also send Secretary General's speech to all of us, all of you, by email. Thank you. And I pass the pass it to our moderator, Trustee Harjeep Singh, who will now take over.
Thank you, Lord Loomba. I'd like to now introduce our President, Shri Blair, and invite her to share her thoughts on this momentous occasion. Shri, over to you.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. Discrimination against widows is an unconscionable injustice, and yet it has for centuries been deeply ingrained in many cultures all over the world, with incalculable consequences for millions of women and their dependents, who are the innocent victims of prejudice and exploitation. For more than 2 decades, the Loomba Foundation has worked not only to bring hope and relief to those who have suffered, but to bring their plight to the attention of the international community, to bring about a change of cultures and mindsets and eradicate this injustice from the world once and for all. I first met Raj Loomba in 1998, when he told me about the discrimination his mother had faced when she first became a widow in 1954, and how he and Veena had decided to establish a charity in her honor. Since then, over many years, I have met widows and their children whose lives have been transformed by the Loomba Foundation. I've learned about the many forms of discrimination, taking away property rights and livelihoods to humiliating and degrading rituals at a time when women are at their most vulnerable and in need of care and support. And I've learned too about the wider impact on widows' dependents whose life's chances are devastated by being taken out of school, having to work to support the family, and often subject to gross exploitation. And wider still, how the prospects of girls are affected from birth by such discrimination, with boys favoured for education and opportunities. Working with Raj, first as patron and since 2004 as president of the Loomba Foundation, I have learned why it's important to focus on supporting widows' families by educating the children to break that cycle of deprivation and empowering the women themselves. I have seen how awareness of the plight of widows and its wider impact has grown among governments and international organizations. And for all the thousands of lives that have been transformed by the Loomba Foundation's programs over the past 2 decades, and for all the other work that goes on across many organizations across the world, I know how important it is for this work to continue. Although the Loomba Foundation began in India, it was clear that prejudice and discrimination against widows is endemic in many countries too, but detailed information was scarce. In 2001, the UN's Division for the Advancement of Women pointed out that there was no group more affected by this sin of omission than widows. They are painfully absent, they went on to say, from the statistics of many developing countries, and they are rarely mentioned in the multitude of reports on women's poverty, development, health, or human rights published in the last 25 years. The Loomba Foundation set about shining a light on this hidden calamity. And through its World Widows Report, the first country-by-country, regional and global quantitative breakdown of data about widows, we know that while it takes different forms, discrimination against widows is rife all over the world, in rich countries as well as poor, and that close to 1 billion people are affected by its malign impact. Soon after I became president of the Loomba Foundation, Raj proposed the idea of creating an annual global day of action as a focus for awareness and change, and to garner the widest possible support of the international community for the idea. The campaign that Raj started in his mother's name was about to go global. So I asked him, what was the day when your mother became a widow? And the answer was the 23rd of June, 1954, 68 years ago today. And so we settled on the 23rd of June as the date for International Widows Day. We were joined by politicians and supporters from the UK and India when we launched the initiative at the House of Lords back in May 2005. And the first International Widows Day took place the following month, and the first International Widows Day conference at the Foreign Office here in London the following year. But for 5 years, we campaigned hard to get recognition for the initiative, working with partners who marked International Widows Day with events in their own countries, talking to presidents, prime ministers, first ladies, and leaders of international organizations to make them aware of the urgency and significance of this issue. We received powerful support from the governments of the UK and India, from key figures like Hillary Clinton, then the US Senator for the state of New York, from US First Lady Laura Bush, and from well-known widows like Yoko Ono. In 2010, the hard work bore fruit thanks to the help of the government and First Lady of Gabon, when the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted International Widows' Day as an official annual day of action. And on the 23rd of June 2011, I attended the first International Widows' Day conference under the UN auspices in New York, chaired by the wife of the then UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Madame Youssoon Tek. At every milestone, we know that however great the achievement, we're still only scratching the surface. Yes, hundreds of thousands of lives of widows and their dependents have been transformed in the last 2 decades. The Loomba Foundation has helped to shine a light on a dark and neglected corner of human society, bringing hope where once there was only despair. But tens of millions more are still actively discriminated against today and desperately in need of support. The objective remains to eradicate this injustice from the world forever, and the work to change cultures through people's hearts and minds, through evidence, education and advocacy, that work continues with the help of so many others we'll hear from today. And while it does, we must do our best to help those worst affected. When disaster strikes, as it has over these last couple of years with the coronavirus pandemic, it is, as always, the poorest who are hit the hardest. And with the double hit of discrimination, it is widows and their families who are hardest hit more. Today, the Loomba Foundation is focusing on offering targeted support and working with governments to pay special attention to widows at this critical time. It is heartening as ever to be at an event such as this, where we can share experiences from around the world. I wish everybody success, not just with today's conference, but with all your important work in the coming year. And I look forward to working with you to continue our determined efforts to make sure that widows are not only fairly treated, but seen and heard and cherished in all communities and cultures as the valued and respected members of society that they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. Lord Loomba, do you want to say a few words to thank our president, and then I'll move over to the panel discussion? You are on mute, Lord Loomba.
Yeah. Well, Cherie, once again, thank you so very much.
No
for
need.
your time and your, so many good words for the Loomba Foundation. And as I said, you're a pillar of strength for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie, and thank you, Lord Loomba. So we're going to go into our distinguished speakers. I'll do a quick round of introductions first with the organizations that they represent. As you will see, they are ranging from India to Africa to the United States, and we'll get a diverse perspective around this particular issue and how they're all at their sort of local level seeing the reality of what it does in terms of the impact and what they're doing on the ground to help alleviate the pain that widowhood has caused around the world. For the quick round of names, we have on the discussion Shauri Reddy, who's the Executive Director of Bala Vikasa. He's from India. From the United States, we have Carolyn Moore. She's the President, Founder and Development Director at Modern Widows Club. From Kenya, we have Rosaline Orva, Founder and Director of the Rona Foundation. From Uganda, we have Charles Osisi, Executive Director of Enterprise Uganda. From Tanzania, we have Rose Sarvat, Executive Director, Tanzania Widows Association. From Nigeria, we have Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, President of the Widows Development Organization. And last but not the least, from Nepal, we have Lily Thapa, who's the founder of Women for Human Rights. A very warm welcome to all of you. to join us here today to commemorate International Widows Day. What I'll do is, we all have, each of you have 5 minutes, and I'll try and be a timekeeper so we try and finish this on schedule. But I'll just call out your name and I will give you a quick heads up, maybe 30 seconds before your 5 minutes are up. So for the first person on, could I please invite Shori Reddy to share his thoughts?
Namaste to everybody. I'm very pleased to be here sharing the experience of Bala Vikasa in empowering the widows in India. And first of all, I want to thank Loomba Foundation for making this International Widow to happen. This is very, very important. This is giving an opportunity for NGOs like us to organize big events or to create good platforms to the widows to voice out their issues. Generally, widows are very discriminated. They have no voice. Nobody is there to listen to them. There is no platform for them to share their problems, share their aspirations. So this kind of International Widows Day is creating a kind of platform for the widows to share their experiences, to share their problems, to share their aspirations. So in this process, Bala Vikasa, as Lord Loombaji said in the beginning, Bala Vikasa conducted one of the biggest events. I think it's a world record event with 10,000 widows. 10,000 widows gathered at a big stadium in Hyderabad in South India. From 2 different states, the widows came and they voiced out their issue. And in India, the widow rituals and many things are connected to the religion. People think, all these customs are attached to the religion, but it's not by religion. All the sanctions to the widows are not by religion. It's all superstitions. So therefore, we invited the Hindu priest, the Catholic priest, the Muslim priest, and asked them on this platform, please tell to the people if all the discrimination on the widows is by religion or is by superstitions. And all the religious leaders have very clearly said, please don't attach the discrimination of widows to the religion. Right? So that was a kind of platform where we created. And from that time, people are trying to change their mindsets. And Bala Vikasa, we are conducting a lot of events like that. And second year also, we conducted another event with another 10,000 people in another province. So we are spreading this as a social movement. We are not doing like a project. We are doing like a social movement where we are mobilizing NGOs, government, media, activists, political leaders, and we have conducted in 200 colleges, trying to motivate even the youth to accept the widow as a human being. Because in India, a widow cannot bless the wedding of even her own child. So we want to educate the youth to take their mother's blessing when they're getting married. Right? So like that, we are trying to create awareness among everybody, among religious people, youth, political leaders, all those things. And today, because of our efforts, widows are trying to think of getting married, and many widows are participating in the religious rituals. They are going to bless the weddings. In India, for every inauguration, you break the coconut. Widow is not permitted to break the coconut. So we are challenging society. When Indira Gandhi, our prime minister, she was a widow. She was a widow for 18 years, and she was ruling the country. And she was breaking coconut at multi-billion-dollar worth project inauguration. When Indira Gandhi, being a widow, can break the coconut at a big function, why not a widow at the village? So we challenge the people to think. Right? Don't go into superstitions. We are in a modern age. We are educated. So with this kind of questioning, people start to think. Right now, hundreds of villages, the village mayors are making the widows to come and participate in the celebrations. And the governments in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where we are, they brought a pension to the widows because widows are economically poor. The governments are giving like 2,000 rupees per month, which is big money for the widows. So they are started to give the pensions for the widows. Now we are fighting or lobbying with the government to create a fund, incentive fund, to encourage the widow remarriages. Because a man can marry within 3 months after the wife's death, but a widow cannot marry. Why? When men need a support, why not a widow? Right? So culturally, they are not encouraged. So therefore, we are fighting with the government because in India, there is a fund for intercaste marriages. right? Similarly, we are trying to encourage the government to create a fund to encourage the widow remarriages so that the widow can live with economical empowerment and also the men can come forward to marry. And we are also trying to lobby with the judiciary to bring an act which is called as Atrocity Act. In India, there is a SC/ST Atrocity Act. If somebody is calling somebody by caste, discriminated by caste, they are put in jail. For the last 10-15 years, this is no more because of this Atrocity Act. So we want to bring this act in the country where people should not dare to stigmatize the widow, should not discriminate, right? So like this, no, we are trying to do in a very big way. And we have partnered with the Loomba Foundation also in organizing one big event in Hyderabad. And we look forward to more collaborations because this is not a project, this is a social movement. We invite the government, media, everybody to participate in our events. So definitely we look forward to collaborate with Loomba Foundation and any other organization in strengthening this movement in India. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shori. Can we go next to Carolyn Moore from the United States?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Good morning.
Great, thank you. I really want to just say, Carolyn Moore from Honor Widows Club, and I want to thank Lord Loomba for changing my life. I met him in 2015. I was invited to come for the launch of the Global Widows Report and honestly didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I'm so glad that I said yes, and I came and I learned, and I'm so honored to be a part of this celebration. Modern Widows Club has been around for 10 years, and so has this day, and I've been honored to share and promote it with all of those in our community. So I just want to tell Lord Loomba that you can just consider one of those individuals out in the world that will really spend the rest of my life continuing your life's work. And so I just thank you. But I wrote a few notes here, and what does International Widows Day mean to me? Well, it means that we're listening to widows, and more importantly, we're believing them. Today, all of us really are saying widows matter, and that's what our theme was this year. But I think the challenge and the question is how much do they matter? Because when you have governments and you have societies that you question in the level in which they care for them, then we have to really look and say, how much are you willing to make sacrifices to make sure that their protection are in place. And so here at MWC, we focus mainly on building community and also educating our ladies, but more importantly, advocacy, because everything we do, we first listen, then we innovate, and we create what widows really are asking for. Widows come here to MWC to find hope, they heal, they grow, and then they become widow leaders. And that's where the connection with the Loomba Foundation is so important, because we can harness the women in our community to really be bigger voices here in the US, and also just make connections in their circles of influence, and that really matters. I want you to know that we have 38 communities now, and we're actually in 5 international communities. We actually have a community now in Hubli, India, because one of the things that we did is we actually took the Global Widows Report, which, by the way, I share with everyone that I talk to. So I'm just like, go look at the PDF. I talk about it in all of my videos. But what that really does is it helps people discover for themselves. And so I'm so grateful for that tool. And women have seen my posts and have then read that, came to us, what can I do? And when we train them to be leaders out in the world. So, but because of the Global Widows Report, we did something really interesting this year. Is we have a new website, and we decided to take those 39 countries that have more than 1 million widows, and we decided to discover what languages those were. And now our website and our newsletter is translated in 39 languages. And so I want Lord Loomba to understand that there's actually 3 Indian languages now that widows can actually come to modernwidows.org, and they can read everything on our website. And And if they signed up for our newsletters, they can actually read it in their own native language. And I think that is a big part of what it's prevented widows themselves to be empowered, is they don't have access to empowerment in their language. And so we're making that available. And so I just have some notes here. We know that empowering Western world widows here in the US, that they will turn around and become a powerful voice for widows around the world. We've seen it happen. And really, International Widows Day has been a springboard for us to just expose the important work that everyone is doing, and also learn, how we can support what is already happening. And so we have about 50,000 followers in our communities. And so we send out emails and we promote this day. We harness their desire to be valued and to find purpose and meaning. And most of them are very receptive to this day. So I just want to tell you about 3 things. Like, first of all, we have a petition on change.org. And that petition is actually, we are asking President Biden and VP Harris. We're proposing 11 important widow and widower recognitions, actually. And our goal is to get 10,000 signatures. We actually had, I think, 5,700 last time I looked. Today at 1 o'clock, we're doing a launch. We're launching a live event. We have a 1 Million Widows video that we had a widow create an original song, and a producer donated his time. So, yep.
Carolyn, I think
we had widows that submitted Million Widows signs like this to raise awareness, and we compiled a video, and so that'll be shown today. We also sent out all of the invitations to these events to our widow advocacy groups on social media. So really, International Widows Day is really a platform for us to just take our brave and bold voices and spread it out into the world. Give them the PDF, let them decide for themselves. Most of the time they come back and they're very speechless, and they want to know what they can do. And so we're grateful to really share and partner. We both, Rona Foundation and also Rosalind Orwa and Margaret Owen, have been recipients of our Legendary Widow Award, and that's another thing that we can get media for. All of these things lead back to sharing what all of us, and especially the Loomba Foundation, is doing. And so we're just really grateful to be a part of it. And
thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're out of time because we got to move to the next speakers. And thank you for mentioning Rosalind Orwa, because she's up next. Rosalind, over to you.
Thank you, Lord Loomba, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to be part of this noble and a great conference. This is the second time you are inviting me. The first time you invited me to House of Lords in London, and I joined your fundraising. I'm coming to this conference looking at COVID-19 with fresh eyes. My community today is being ravaged by the Delta variant. In my village, we have lost, in a village of about 5,000 people, we have about 6 funerals. One of those people who are dead is Mama Jane, a widow who was in my group and a friend at the age of 72. Mama Jane had lost her sons, and she was caring for her grandchildren, 6 orphaned children. So what that means to me is a project in the community. Loomba Foundation is right in my rural village of Bath, is the burden of orphan care, the orphan crisis that COVID-19 is going to leave, when elderly widows who had already survived a pandemic, HIV and AIDS, are now dying because of COVID-19 without knowing when the vaccine will reach us. So I'm coming with a heavy heart, and COVID is no longer just a widow story and tell us what widows are going through in Kenya, how widows are surviving poverty, how widows are lacking food, how widows are managing with COVID. It's not data, it is not news item, it has become a personal story. Just like HIV and AIDS was a personal story when my whole family died. And later on, I became a widow at the post-election violence in 2008. And I stood up for myself when they came to sexually cleanse me because as a widow in my community, you have to go through the sexual cleansing, which is to clean you off the omen of death. And that practice, while COVID has changed the burial practices and procedures because of health and COVID protocols, those harmful traditional practices have not changed. And so we are staring at a new generation of young men and women becoming widowed and leaving grandchildren who will need projects like us, who are completely underfunded. So what this day has done for us, and there have been some gains. Our country, I personally started celebrating International Widows Day in Kenya in 2015. And I remember we just 8 widows distributing food. Later on, the following 2 years later, our government started celebrating the day and marking it as a national day. Little progress has been made from that. While the celebrations are done in the city, the life of a rural widow, and I am my story, I live and work in the rural village, has not changed. A little, we are still fighting stigma, shame, and silence, just like we were fighting in 2008. Now we are looking at, so the day is more or less cosmetic. It's very beautifully celebrated by governments and partners. We will still remain under resourced. Our voices will still be invisible. We will be very colorful day and celebrated all over social media. Policy gaps will remain the same. Harmful traditional practices will not be outlawed. Widows Fund will not be created in a country with over 8 million widows. And we keep on talking and opening spaces and having this conversation. So our prayer is that somebody will hear us. We do activities at Loomba Foundation, like our campaign this year is just post your photo on your social media and say, I stand with widows. It is really possible. They're doing it and they're coming on board, including elected leaders. And they're not even putting captions on these photos because maybe they're just doing it to make us happy to show. But it is giving Loomba Foundation a tool to lobby for these interventions that are sustainable and to also lobby for policy gaps to be met in long term. So we are achieving by doing little acts of change. Has it benefited widows in Kenya, the International Widows Day? Yes, it has made us be seen and be heard, but a lot remains to be done. Do we have a plan on how we are going to, and partnerships have come on board. Modern Widows Club has been gracious. They've given us a platform to fundraise through their social media. They have given us a space to get heard. They've even recognized and awarded our work. The Loomba Foundation has been a great ally in terms of connections and giving us these tools like the Widows Report, that when you say Kenya is number 33 amongst the countries that abuse widows, and you produce that report, then they begin to see, oh, we are on the list. And so maybe perhaps it's time to start this conversation. Widows for Peace Through Democracy has given us a great tool as a partner, which is the Widows Charter. And just last month, pre-marking this day, we petitioned our county, Siaya County in Kenya, and we said, can we adapt this charter? Can we look at what is possible within this charter and say the widows are unrecognized and under-resourced and unseen. So where can what is possible in the law, what is possible in attitude change, and what is possible long-term, so that we have a holistic change around widows and widowhood. What can be done
Rosalie,
globally?
we're at the end of your time. If you could wrap up in a few seconds.
What can be done globally? Global partners that are here is to use their social capital to endorse and support grassroots organizations in Rwanda, in Tanzania. And that way, those under-resourced, under-recognized grassroots organizations can sustain the much needed work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind, for sharing that with us. Can we please invite Charles to share his thoughts?
Thank you so much, Lord Loomba, for giving the Widows Day an international voice. And I'm so glad to be participating in this international conference. A widow, like Madame Rosalind has just said, is a lady who, with the death of her companion or her partner, is immediately thrown into a position of leadership. A position that transforms her immediately to from being a helper, a number two, to becoming a number one. Number one, leading her family, leading her community, but with the limited resources and limited preparation for that number one position. She moves into a position of becoming a vision bearer, a provider, a giver of hope, and a person who plans for the next generation. Generations that later, if done well through her resilience as a widow, will bring out individuals like we have had Lord Loomba himself beginning to touch and extend a hand of help to the most demanding in our society. But as widows do all these things, as Rosalind has pointed out, for us also in Uganda, the experience is quite bitter. They do all this against many odds. They are blamed for the death of the husband. They are cursed for failing to raise children well. They are criticized for wasting resources that the husband left behind. They are expected to continue giving support to the communities, to the individuals that the husband used to look after. But as they do that, they don't get due credit. They are also sometimes treated as outsiders, deprived of family assets, and then chased away empty-handed. At Enterprise Uganda, an institution that has received the generous support of Lord Loomba Foundation, we provide business, entrepreneurship, and mindset training for widows, for women, for young people. But it was through the Lord Loomba Foundation that we began to focus deeply in delivering entrepreneurship solution to the widows. And I bring this aspect because through entrepreneurship, it has been known that if it is delivered very well, entrepreneurship or enterprise route is a leveler, is an equalizer. For anybody who the background has denied the chance to make the best of their potential. So through entrepreneurship, widows have been able to create businesses that are treasured in the community, businesses that have gone ahead to become leading players in their respective sectors. And I just wanted to bring this out because we have a case of a lady who came to us in her early 20s, having lost her husband who was a medical doctor. They had 2 young children left behind with a young lady called Maureen. Maureen had no medical background, but the husband had started a medical clinic. When she died, this medical clinic was left in her hands. Without any medical background, without any business background, without any idea on how to lead a business entity, Maureen came to Enterprise Uganda, and we did give her a business mindset. Today, Maureen is running a business center that has not only grown the number of staff from 5 when the husband was there to now 15 staff. And among the 15 staff are doctors, nurses, clinicians. People are leading and doing laboratory services. Maureen's business medical center today is one of those that have been accredited even to do testing for COVID-19. It has done so well, she has been able to build her own home. She has been able to take her 2 children to good schools. Maureen is now an example and an inspiration to many other women, not just women who have lost their partners, to many other women who are saying, if a lady who had no experience, no technical expertise can fit into the shoes of the departed husband, can raise a medical facility that today customers go on to consume the services from on merit, not because it's a widow. People are going there saying, this is a good facility. That story and many others like those that have been empowered economically through entrepreneurship have given us that picture that says, if we can empower widows, not only will we be able to empower their economic standing, we shall also cause them to deliver services that make the society to begin to embrace them. But thirdly, they become an inspiration to women, no matter whether they are married or they are widowed or they have no resources to have inherited, they can indeed pass through that route. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity where we have now put the widows at the international platform. I look forward to more partners, local and international, beginning to see the window of opportunity that exists in tapping into the resilience, the tenacity that widows tend to have, and taking that tenacity to get them to run enterprises. If we do more of this, the story of widows, the story of the deprived, will begin to become a story of hope, a story of empowerment, and a story of raising individuals that could transform the picture that currently is surrounding the journey of a widow.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you very much for sharing your views. Could we please invite Rose Sarwat next, please? Over to you, Rose.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rose Sarwat from Tanzania Widows Association. Hello.
We can hear you, Rose. You can continue.
Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rose Sarwat. I'm a founder and the executive director of Tanzania Widows Association, TAWIA. Our widows organization is focusing on widows' economic empowerment, free legal aid service to widows, health issues, education, psychosocial support, and advocating on law reforms and policies. I'm very pleased to be here as one of speakers in this very special days for widows. This day means so much to me and our organization as I experienced the challenges of being a widow. After I found the organization, I wished to see widows get together and know each other and create a sense of community and to have a platform that will raise a joint voice. Before International Widows Day, I struggled to coordinate widows in my country, although I used conferences and seminars, but I didn't achieve a very big goal. But after I found this date, it became very easy to coordinate and achieve our goal of widows platform. We made our widows platform from our zones, different zones, regions, districts, and wards. This happened after one day I went online and found that this day exists and it has been found by a Lord Loomba. I was very happy to know that there is this day. I started to inform widows, government, and my community and the other stakeholders. We started communicating, and I remember I also write on an email to Loomba Foundation to know better about how to commemorate it. Our first commemoration was in 2014. I remember it was so successfully, about 3,000 widows gathered, and we got a media coverage, and it was well known all over our country and succeeded to have widows platform. Today it is our 8th commemoration, and the goal of having widows platform is done. The forum is now used to address widows' challenges, and widows are now heard, and many steps to help them has been taken. International Widows Day helped to achieve our organization goals very quickly, as we wanted it to be known all over the country, especially widows, as our organization was a first widows organization in our country. So after our first commemoration, Widows Agenda was known quickly and easy by government, community, and all stakeholders. After Widows Agenda understood well, we started to get funds and push forward our organization missions. And now widows are in a bit relief from their challenges after being in the platform and raise their voices nationwide. They can now access various opportunities from the government and the other stakeholders. And on this International Widows Day, we normally do a lot of activities, like we provide free health services, such as checkups and health education, free legal aid services, and we have legal advice and legal education. We also have exhibition of various handicrafted products by widows and those who attended by the products to support widows. We normally have peace walk with banners of various messages to the government and the communities. It's a way of raising the voice. We also have various education topics to build awareness on widows on various development issues in education. There have been some opportunities from government and community and stakeholders. Through seminars, conference, we give them awareness on their issues and get support from different stakeholders. As they get free legal aid service, government have created grants to help widows group to run small businesses. Widows can access free education from primary to secondary, which is provided by our government. And churches and Muslims have also recognized the date in promoting the rights of widows and helping the widows in their immediate community with their problems and challenges. The government has given priority to widows for loans and affordable health insurance packages for widows. The government implemented free education from primary to secondary education to relieve widows' children education.
Rose,
we
you
have
have
support.
Rose, if you can give your closing comments in the next few seconds, we'll move to the next speaker.
Okay. We are getting support from our government and other NGOs. We normally commemorating together this day and raise widows' voices. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rose. Could we please invite Dr. Eleanor Nobi next?
Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I'm speaking to you from Abuja, Nigeria. You know, as I read my invitation, I got the chills because I recall that I had been invited as a speaker to the International Widows' Day event by the Loomba Foundation at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And I was introduced by a pioneer in this movement, Margaret Owen. And here we are today, 10 years celebrating the United Nations Declaration of International Widows' Day. And, you know, we're just so grateful to Lord Loomba and the Loomba Foundation, Cherie Blair and other widows' rights influencers. The 23rd of June is also special for me personally. It's my husband's birthday, and he's a great supporter of my work with Widows Development Organization. When he almost lost his life in a car crash, there were those who felt that that was a warning sign because I was challenging the system as a human rights defender. And today, yes, it's a commemorative day. It provides the opportunity for heightened awareness, but that awareness should not be limited to this one day. In other words, we should not go to sleep after today, but let us see this as an opportunity, very much like a Grand Prix pit stop, to refuel for increased momentum. My organization, the Widows Development Organization, with support from the Global Fund for Widows, support widows who have suffered harmful practices like the levirate, where they're passed on to the next surviving male, disinheritance, which is pervasive, they're marginalized, stigmatized in the community. And what we've been able to do is to provide empowerment through an entire value chain. So the widows have been provided economic trees, the palm tree. They have a processing mill. They've been taught sales so that they can get rid of the middle men or women, as the case may be. They've been taught savings. And guess what this has done in the community? What it has done is it has given them a status, a respect in the community, positive impact on their families, and that has attracted more funding to other grassroots women's-led projects in the community. But we can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is COVID today. More male fatalities have occurred. I'm a physician myself, And, you know, we're still waiting on the research to know why more male fatalities have happened. But what has that done? That has caused more widows. And in the case of polygamous families, you have more than one widow per family. So during the COVID-19 crisis, we've also had increased rates of child marriage. And that has also meant that we have had increased rates of child widows, especially in the conflict-affected areas like we have in the north of Nigeria with the Boko Haram conflict. In a very, very recent report by Mohinda, she tells us that there are 4 million more girls at risk of child marriage. And in fact, the UNFPA estimates that the disruptions to child marriage prevention programs due to the pandemic could potentially result in an additional 13 million more child marriages by 2030. And as I've said, the more child marriages you have, the more you can have child widows. And these have been due in the context of COVID to the loss of livelihoods, to school closures, and to the lack of access to sexual and reproductive health services. If we look at, I'll just sort of, as I round up, give one example of what could happen in the context of conflict. So we have widows who are now heads of households in the context of conflict, benefiting, for example, from food vouchers or food cards. And this has brought on a new phenomenon that is locally called marriage for food card. What is that? We have men in the host communities who find it difficult to find food for their families, and although already married, now marry widows who have their food cards. This is a new phenomenon that's coming out, and in interviewing a wife in a host community recently, she said, "They have come to capture our husbands," end of quote. So here you have, you know, a different type of dynamic in conflict around widows. Fancy that they are now being looked at as a threat.
Eleanor,
But widows are, yes, I'm rounding up, widows are not just solution lies in a global treaty to end all forms of violence against women and girls. Please go to the website of everywoman.org to learn about a treaty that will bring a solution to all the issues we've been talking about today regarding widows of all ages. Thank you very much indeed.
thank you so much, Eleanor. Could we please invite Lily next? She's the last of the panelists, and then we'll go into the discussion with Shuri, Lord Loomba, and Peter after this. Lily, over to you.
Good evening from Nepal. Madam Cherry Blair, it's so nice to see you after a long time. Lord Loomba, really thank both of you for establishing this particular day for widows at UN. Distinguished participants, fellow advocate for the rights of the widows from all over the world. First of all, I would like to wish all of us to make the world where no one will be discriminated on the basis of the marital status. Actually, I've been asked to speak on what does Widows' Day means to me. Actually, this is the right time to celebrate Widows' Day because the COVID is creating unprecedented number of the widows all over the world. And because of the lockdown from almost for a year in my country, widows are suffering not only with the health crisis, but also facing economic crisis due to losing their informal job and work. In Nepal, till today, around 9,000 people have been died by COVID, and we have been assumed that 4,000 to 5,000 women have been turned into widowhood. And unfortunately, just few days back, we have a big landslide and flood, and many people have been died. We even don't know how many women is going to be a widow by this disaster and by the pandemic. You know, today in the morning, actually, we just marked International Widows Day by hearing the voices of these new widow by COVID. And when they shared their stories, it was really, really tremendous challenges they are going through after losing their husbands by COVID. Because being the sole breadwinners of the family, most of the widows don't have access to the health services, especially the vaccine and the medicines and other medical supports. So many people, and especially the families of the widows, are dying day by day. And I think particularly this is the day where we can draw the attention of the global community to acknowledge the violation of the widow's rights and to act for the immediate relief response and recovery of the widows and their dependent. And as you asked about me, what does that International Widows Day to me? And for me, it's a lot to me and many other widows in my country, because widows have been an invisible member of the community for the longest time and still are to this day. Thus, this day brings visibility to them and their respective issues. And it's also a symbol of the recognition of the women who have lost their husbands and become a single in the marital status like us. And I think it is also a global symbol to acknowledge the widows' suffering and voices forum to address the widows' issues, and also a representation of the empowerment. And how does my organization is helping those widows? Actually, you know that my organization, to Women for Human Rights, is a large membership-based organization. So we have organized more than 2 million widows across the country who are now actually working for the change agents in the community. But right now, majority of the widows in the community, they are working on a humanitarian ground. And basically, we've been engaged for the rights of the widows from last 26 years. And this particular day actually helping on assisting on getting the recognition of our work on national and the international level. And this particular day, International Widows Day, has been helpful in highlighting and advocating and lobbying for the concern of the widows of Nepal and widows of South Asia on a broader platform. From my organization, actually, we have extensive experiences working for the capacity building, movement building, and institutional building, and the organizational strengthening, because we work at the two levels, in the community and the policy level. And basically, we've been able to bring the issues of the widowhood at the policy level and have been succeed to mainstream the rights of the widows into all plans and policies of the government, as well as into the Colombo Declaration of our South Asian government level. And we even been succeed to change the various discriminatory laws as well. And likewise, currently WHR is been leading the widows movement, not only in Nepal, but also in South Asia, as a member or secretary of the South Asian Network for the Widows Empowerment in Development. And basically, this particular International Widows Day has been succeed to mainstream this particular day into our government's calendar. So recognition and International Widows Day and listing it to the calendar of the government is one of the major steps to recognize the widows. So I am really thankful to the Loomba Foundation for making this happen to our country as well. And beside that, just because of the advocacy work at the national and the international level, the government has been providing some kind of allowances to the widows, which has been helping not only to the widows, but also helping a little bit for the education of their children as well. though
Lily,
there are
we're at the end of our time. If you could take a few seconds
lastly,
to
what I
find
just
final
wanted
comment.
to say, okay, because you know that Nepal doesn't have a sufficient health related materials, and we are totally dependent on the other countries. And the most challenging parts is that due to the less of the health access, because of the financial constraints, most of the widows and most of the people are, dying here, not having access to the vaccine. So I really wanted to call upon this forum to support the Nepal and especially to the widows to have a medical services like vaccines and other medicines. And thank you for giving me this platform to speak, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Lily, and thank you to each of the speakers. I know we could continue to speak about this really personal and passionate topic for each and every one of you, but we're already running a little behind schedule, but we'll try and catch up, hopefully. We are quickly going to go into the panel discussion with the founder of the foundation, Lord Loomba, our president, Cherie Blair, and our trustee, Peter Ratsing. So if I could have each of them join us. If it's okay with all of you, since we're running about 20 minutes behind, we keep this particular section to about 15 minutes instead of the 20. Is that okay with everybody? Lord Loomba, Peter, Cherie?
Yes, it can even be reduced to 10 minutes now because everybody has spoken well, and we are very much aware of what is going on with the widows. Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'll kick off with a question we had for you, Lord Loomba, about what can governments do to support and help widows financially and to support them through their bereavement and their grief when they become widows? Well, my answer is very simple. I think pandemic has been worldwide and it's a big problem, and no one country can solve it. Therefore, I believe that the G20 countries should get it together, and as the G7 has decided to supply billion doses and help girls for education, they should set up a fund, a global fund for this problem, and G20 can easily eradicate or help widows all around the world, especially the COVID-19, if they were to set up a global fund. And that's how I feel. And the second way, I think the national governments can also play their part by setting up a national commission for widows, like they have a national commission for women. And I have been advocating for many, many years for this, however, without any success. But I think if we can all get together, I'm sure the governments will listen one day, and National Commission for Widows will be able to help not only for the pandemic, but also for other things like children education, children marriages, and other problems widows face in their life. Thank you, Lord Loomba. Cherie, any thoughts from your end on what can governments be doing and what happens post-pandemic? Are there any ideas of what we could harness from this fantastic conference and all the ideas that have come together today?
Well, of course, I think Raj's idea is, as always, is a fantastic one. He always comes up with big ideas and somehow manages to pull them off. But I think what I took up most from our discussion today is both how universal this issue is from the speakers we've heard from all over the world, and also how the widows themselves, with the help of civil society, are in fact taking more power, are in fact doing things and challenging the assumptions that have led to their disadvantage in the first place. And I think the most important thing that we all need to do is to ensure that we give agency and empowerment to women, and particularly the widows in this case, to enable them to find the right solutions to make their and their children's lives better. And thank you to some of our speakers from Nepal and from Nigeria, from all over the speakers who have come from, of telling us the actual practical things that they are doing that really every day are making a difference. And it shows the importance of this day, because we can highlight these things and make sure that people understand that this is not an issue that's gone away. It's not an issue that's confined to one religion or one region. It is actually a global phenomenon and needs global solutions.
Thank you, Shuri. Peter, I'm going to pick on an idea you shared with us several years ago on sort of creating an ability to create a fund of some sort for financial inclusion of widows. Given what's happening around the world with the not just the pandemic and its consequences and the economic support governments are given, but also in the financial world, this whole focus around ESG. Do you think this is a time where we might have an opportunity to use the crisis to think about some of these issues?
Yes, most definitely, Hajiv. But before I tackle that question, just very quickly would like to share two things with our dear friends and colleagues. It's a wonderful celebratory moment, this being the 10th anniversary of International Widows Day. And I think Lord Loomba and Shri somewhat downplayed just how difficult it was. I mean, they engaged in a lot of effort, but there was opposition. And it's almost as if the spirit of Pushpa Loomba was kind of helping us bring this about, because it was touch and go until we finally got the vote and the announcement. And I would also venture to say, you know, I know from firsthand experience that it would be impossible to get this today. I've been involved in some initiatives to try to bring about international days, and it's just a near impossibility. So we're very, very lucky and grateful. There's a wonderful line in Proverbs, without vision, the people perish. And really, we must pay extraordinary tribute to the vision of Lord Loomba and Shri for bringing this about. I'm also struck by the comments of some of the speakers, like Mrs. Owa, that we can have these conferences, but then it's business as usual. So what is heartening in our conversations today is just how much there are concrete efforts to change the lives of real people. And this has to happen through a one-on-one engagement. A fund would certainly be something significant. There's a lot of wind in the sails of ESG initiatives. So we could certainly try to lobby the corporate sector to get involved, because issues of social justice are now very much at the forefront of all different constituencies. At the same time, as we sit here, there are unspeakable atrocities taking place in the world, genocides that are actually creating new cohorts of widows as we speak. So I think we need to consider that, much as June 23rd is International Widows Day, every day is International Widows Day, because there are extraordinarily inhumane things happening for women and widows all over the world. And this is a deeply cultural notion. In Western culture, we have this kind of lusty notion of the merry widow who's promiscuous. And then, in India, there's the horrible consequence of a woman having to wear white, not being able to eat spicy food, and being seen as the purveyor of bad luck. All of these superstitious practices, these tropes, are deeply pernicious and toxic, and we need to really militate against them. So I think there's a lot of work to be done as we celebrate this 10-year anniversary.
Thank you, Peter, Shri, and Lord Loomba. I think on that note, we'll move to the next part of this conference, which is a short video that was prepared and shared by a very famous Bollywood singer, Bapi Lahiri. So if we could ask Rich to pull that up, and then we'll sort of come to the conclusion right after that.
can continue to educate widows' children. We can continue to help widows gain that financial independence they so badly need, and in particular, campaign worldwide to ensure that widows and their children obtain their basic human rights.
I would like to commend you for helping to bring attention to the rights of widows. I would especially like to thank my friend Cherie Booth and the Loomba Trust for all of your work on behalf of widows in India and around the world.
She was a wife but became a widow. What happens next? How would she know? Gone everything in her life that she knew. Sorrow all at once, how will she get through? Everywhere she turns, no one to lend a hand. This was not the life she had ever planned.
Don't you worry, strong woman, I see there'll be opportunity. Hold on tight just a little bit longer, soon we'll change your destiny. Have faith and you'll see that you soon will be free, as there'll be justice for widows.
Justice for widows. Justice for widows. International Widows Day. Justice for widows. She's lost her husband, but still has a life. Pain in her heart and many tears in her eyes. Who can she trust? Who is left to believe? So much injustice, faith lost in humanity.
Don't you worry, strong woman, I see there'll be opportunity. Hold on tight just a little bit longer, soon we'll change your destiny. Have faith and you'll see that you soon will be free, as there'll be justice for widows.
Justice for widows. Justice for widows. International Widows Day. Justice for widows. She's someone's sister and daughter and mother. But who can she turn to? On who can she depend? Shunned by everyone and treated like dirt. So who can she tell about all of the
On the 23rd of June, we can show her that we care. International Widows Day, and we'll end her fear. Have faith and you'll see that you soon will be free, as there'll be justice for widows.
Justice for widows. Justice for widows. International Widows Day. Justice for widows. International Widows Day. 23rd of June. Justice for widows. Justice for widows. International Widows Day. Justice for widows.
Invite Mrs. Shameen Lalji to give a vote of thanks, and we're at the tail end of our program for today. Mrs. Lalji, over to you.
Unmute myself, right? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. Mrs. Sherry Blair, Lord Karan Bilimoria, Lord Loomba, fellow trustees, speakers, and distinguished guests. I have been a trustee of the Loomba Foundation for over 20 years and have been supporting the work of the foundation to battle the impact of unfair discrimination faced by widows. The foundation, as you've already heard, has worked tirelessly over the years to break the cycle of deprivation that threatens the life chances of entire families. And we've been educating children of poor widows and empowering the widows to work and to become financially independent. My late husband, Shiraz Lalji, sadly passed away last year, also believed strongly in educating children and empowering the widows, and had generously supported the cause. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to express our sincere thanks to all the speakers at this special conference who have reminded us of the importance of this work. We were very happy to have with us Lord Karan Bilimoria, a longtime supporter of the Loomba Foundation. Lord Bilimoria is president of CBI and co-chair of the Advisory Council of the Loomba Foundation. Thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria, for your opening remarks. Widows need our support even more during these troubled times to build a more equitable world. And the government's support is essential if we are to achieve this. We are honored to have with us Mr. Harjeev Singh and Dr. Peter Raj Singh, who are both trustees of the foundation. Thank you, Mr. Harjeev Singh, for moderating this event. The Loomba Foundation is deeply grateful to Mrs. Sherry Blair, president of our foundation, for her unwavering support throughout. From her present at the charity's inaugural event in London in 1998, and subsequently agreeing to be our patron and serving as the president of the foundation from 2004 to the present day. Sherry Blair has been unstinting in her support for disadvantaged widows and their families, and we thank her most sincerely for her presence and contribution today. Our sincere thanks also to Dr. Margaret Owen, the founder and president of Widows for Peace Through Democracy, who has worked tirelessly to raise awareness of the plight of widows for many years. Last but not least, our special thanks to all those directly engaged in supporting widows all over the world who have shared their experience with us today. Rosalie Norwa, director of the Rona Foundation in Kenya. Dr. Eleanor Wadanobi, president of the Widows Development Organization in Nigeria. Carolyn Moore, founder of the Modern Widows Club in the United States. Lili Thapa, founder of Women for Human Rights in Nepal. Rose Sarwat, executive director of the Tanzania Widows Association. Bella Vikas organization in India, which was represented by its executive director, Shauri Reddy. Charles Osisi, executive director of Enterprise Uganda. And Abi Naha and Rachel Kerr from Cambridge Wireless, thank you very much for all your support in organizing this event. Thank you again, and have a Kwaheri Asante Sana from Africa, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lalji. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this June the 23rd International Widows Day. One thing I have to share is, in my 16 years with the organization, I am amazed at how more and more people continue to gather and advocate for such an important issue around the world. And I was absolutely heartbroken at some of the stories I'm hearing of what's happening thanks to the impact the pandemic has had. But I am also extremely optimistic that all of us together will be able to change where the direction of support comes for widows around the world. On one last thank you, I do want to also say is behind Lord Loomba is his wonderful family, Lady Veena Loomba, Rita, Roma, and Rinku, who are always there behind in the background. I'm sure they're listening to me as I speak this, but a big thank you to all of you. And thank you everybody who joined us today.
And now my granddaughters too, They
Yes,
also
of
helped
course.
me quite a lot. Thank you.
I saw Rashi earlier, so yes, and the
Yeah.
granddaughters and the grandchildren, of course.
Yeah, Risa, Rashi, and Duvina, they all are big supporter of the charity. Thank you.
And your sister is also a supporter.
Yes, my younger sister. In fact, we are now
The only living sister.
only living sister. Thank you very much, Indu, for helping us and joining us today.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
everybody.
Very proud of you. Keep it up. Very proud.
Great. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful week ahead.
And before I finish, I also want to thank
Awesome.
my 3 people in India who have played a huge part in development of the charity, and that is Atal Palta, Pavan Kumar, and Hemant Sharma. Without their help over the last 10 years or even more, we wouldn't have been able to do all the work we have done in the country. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and bye-bye.
Bye.